I'm online, you're online, let's chat. As per requested in a previous comment, I'm going to do a video on the truths about French culture and some stereotypes that are unfortunately inaccurate but widely believed. I base this knowledge that I have on my own Frenchness, so my family's French heritage, as well as me living here in Paris since the start of this year. Based on that, I do not want to say that this is the holy grail answer you're gonna get. There's going to be some discussion, but that's what I'm looking forward to. So if you disagree with what I've said in this video, please feel free to put it in the comments. Let's get a conversation started on this. And without further ado, let's jump straight into it. I have taken some notes of the most, according to my entourage, my own perception, as well as Reddit, the most commonly perceived French stereotypes. Now, some of these I would say are positive, although most of these tend to be negative. So let's go into it. Number one, relatively easy one. French women wear a lot of red nail polish. And I kid you not, I did not prepare this in advance for this video, but I am currently wearing red nail polish. It is something that is done, and I think it's in combination with the red lipstick, which is a little less common, but especially in the evenings on night outs, yes, tend to wear red. I don't know, honestly, I actually don't know where this association came from, but it is true that red nails, they just give that extra little touch, and it just makes everything look slightly more put together somehow. I don't know why red over any other color, but it's true. Another one is French people are late to everything. Now, in my own experience, I am a person who tends to be on time, if not early, to everything I attend. I just hate the idea of being late. But since moving, I actually have had to learn to be a little late in what they call here les 15 minutes de politesse. 15 minutes of politeness. It's the idea that you only start to arrive to a dinner party or to something informal, important detail, informal, 15 minutes after the announced time. So just to give the host extra 15 minutes to either take a breather because they've spent the entire day setting everything up, or give them the extra time they need in case they have not yet finished. This is not the case, however, when it comes to business meetings or to anything related to the cinema, theater. If you're not there on time, they're closing the door, you're not getting in. So I would say this is a 50-50 true and false, as in it is true that in friendly context, you tend to be more laissez-faire in your way of showing up, but in business and formal settings, I would say stick to the time. That's what the French people do too. Another one I quite liked is the idea of the French are incredibly outgoing. Nope. I don't know if anybody else thinks about this similarly, but I tend to think that some cities are extroverted and others are introverted. And to me, Paris is an introverted city. The French, at least in the north, Paris, Lille, tend to be more, you know, they'll be polite to you, not a problem, but they keep to themselves, you know. It's something that I mentioned in a previous video, the idea that the French will never sit front row at a cafe because you would much rather want to watch others than be watched. In that way, you sit in the back rows and you see, you know, life at the cafe. You wonder what everybody's conversations is about, and like you see the people pass on the street, but you do not put yourself in the front lines and be seen. I feel like people usually compare Paris as being the European New York somehow, but I do feel like New York has the benefit of being more American and thus more extroverted than the French, who tend to be more closed off to new people, especially internationals. That being said, the south of France is a completely different story, and they tend to be more similar to the Spanish and the Italians in their loudness and their presence. So that also plays a role. Smoking. Absolutely, the stereotype is true. I don't care what anybody says. It is incredibly difficult when you just move here to not immediately take up smoking. And it's not only because it looks cool or it doesn't look cool, it's genuinely because it is so engulfed in the culture. When you are at work, you get extra smoking breaks. When you are in a night out, you at some point will see everybody leave the table to go smoke outside, and there's usually 2-3 people left at the table at the end who don't smoke, and then you just make conversation. Quitting smoking is very much pushed, but it almost feels like a rite of passage. Everybody starts smoking, tries to quit smoking, and eventually goes back to smoking. The subjects of lung cancer, etc., no one talks about. I have never heard anybody be like, oh yeah, lung cancer or whatever. No, it is basically a combination with drinking. Like, you drink a glass of wine and you smoke a cigarette on a terrace. It's part of the culture, it's part of it. I think there's also the rise of vaping with under 18-year-olds, or like I would say 15 to 25, which is concerning, especially since we don't know yet what the consequences of vaping truly are. But I think that smoking is something that, as much as the government tries to push for it, is not going to go away anytime soon. And mind you, smoking is expensive. A pack of cigarette here could put you back 15 euros easily. Like, between, I would say, 10 to 15 euros is the norm for packs of cigarettes here. So mind you that people smoke a lot and pay a lot for smoking. And yeah, it's still not going anywhere. I think the government is planning on raising the price of cigarettes again in an attempt to discourage people from smoking. Not happening. That's actually a really fun one. French people hate change. And I would say somewhat yes. They are very politically active in general, I would say. You see protests happening very often. People keep up with politics. But at the same time, I would say that anything that has to do with new technologies or new innovations, the French don't tend to be front runners on that point. I want to touch upon the subject of work-life balance, because that is something that came up multiple times in different ways. So one of the stereotypes I heard is that the French are lazy at work and that they don't work hard. And when I started to think about it, I was like, well, in my experience, that's not really true. Where does the stereotype even come from? And then I realized that in Emily in Paris, for example, when you compare it to an American work-life balance, yeah, you could say that the French take their life balance more seriously. You will have hour lunch breaks, hour and a half lunch breaks. If you have a meeting during your lunch break, for example, if you're meeting a client, people tend to leave at 6 from work. You get to work at around 9:30. But there is this holy work-life balance, the idea that you work hard at work and you do your work well and you're productive, but the moment you leave, you are in your own time. I would actually argue as well on the lazy is so inaccurate because of how competitive they are. In France, the competition to get a good job and to get ahead is very strong. People want to prove themselves, people want to work hard, and yeah, I think actually this stereotype of French people not working is just because we get paid leave and people take their holidays and their off days very seriously. There's also a very big, strong union culture in France. A lot of people are in unions, and unions have a lot of influence and a lot of power. So in that way, a lot more benefits towards workers can be put in place that you don't have in, for example, countries like the United States. So in conclusion, I would say, are the French lazy? Absolutely not. Are they serious about their work-life balance? Absolutely. And then we get into the romantics and the relationships of it all. On a romantic level, there's either people who are saying the French are serial daters or they're incredibly romantic. Again, this is a generalization. Everybody is different. You have great experiences in life, you have less good experiences in life. But in general, I would say that in Paris, at least the younger generation, there is this very present hookup culture. Hookup culture is something that developed, I think, in the 2010s and really became fruitful through dating apps like Tinder, Bumble. It's this idea that you can go on a date, a first date, meet somebody, take them home, and that's it, you never speak again. And in France, I would say as a woman, my experience has been positive, luckily, but that's because I am staunchly against hookup culture and I don't necessarily participate in it. I do know of its existence and I do know of its prevalence, however. Romantics, I would say that just like you have in any other culture, if people want to, they can be very romantic. There is this romanticization of young love, so you will, of course, have romantic moments and be able to have romantic experiences in a city like Paris. But even outside in France, I say that traditional modes of relationships outside of the hookup culture that you have in big cities are still very prevalent. So yes, the French can be very romantic if they want to be. If they're in the hookup culture though, forget about it. Last point, but a very important one, because I think it's one of the most destructive stereotypes, is that French people are okay with adultery and with cheating. We see it in movies and in television series, like in Emily in Paris as well. I think it's Sylvie who says, if you don't have an affair while you're with a married man while you're in Paris, have you even done Paris well at all?
Okay, Camille is my friend.
Oh, those are two totally unrelated statements. Oh, Emily, you're getting more French by the day.
You have done Paris very well if you avoid adultery. On the topic of Emily in Paris, I think they actually did redeem themselves. I think at that point in the series, they all went to Saint-Tropez together to cheer up Camille because she thinks that her boyfriend, Gabriel, is cheating on her with somebody. Spoiler alert, it's Emily, but anyway. And she starts crying and she's in her church and she's like, oh, I am. And Emily, because she's heard from Sylvie say, oh, cheating is fine in Paris because Sylvie herself has a long time affair with a married man who is also a client, which, by the way, in French culture would absolutely not be allowed. And Emily asks, wait, why is that a problem? I thought it was okay. And Camille says, well, no, it's really not.
She pretended to be my friend while she had an affair with my boyfriend. And to my boyfriend who fucked my fake friend.
If you didn't know this was a stereotype yet, I am so proud I had the honor of debunking it for you. I actually want to touch upon one more point, and that is quickly going back to a video I did about the Parisian chic aesthetic. One person in the comments mentioned that this is actually the bows and the Chanel bags and the luxury like Birkin bags are very common in Paris. It just depends on where you live. And I will give them credit in the fact that, of course, if you go to wealthy neighborhoods, you are going to see luxury bags, you're going to see nice cars, expensive cars. But the point of that video was really to talk about the realities for most French people and the real French girl aesthetic. And it's the same as in London, that I'm sure in other big cities, London, New York, Rio de Janeiro, you know, you have people who have a lot of money and have nice cars, nice watches, nice handbags, and an expensive style. But that is not the majority of the population. As you can see, I read your comments, so don't hesitate to write something, and I look forward to reading them and to see you in my next video. Bye!